So what I want to let you guys know is we've talked about on this channel an extensive thoughts about why recruiting is low. It's the hottest topic in the past couple months. And it's funny how this just keeps reoccurring. And it feels like it's being blamed in like this shrapnel fashion where it's like, I don't know, man, it's just bad. And I'm like, it's not bad. You just have to dissect it in one way in order to understand. I gotta say, task and purpose, look at this. They've done General Berger wrong. They've stretched him out a little bit. His confused face looks more confused, okay? But Max Hauptman says, Marine Corps Commandant says COVID vaccine mandates are hurting recruiting. I don't want to say anything other than, this headline seems like it should have been written, 2 years ago, maybe, because I have some critical thoughts on this. And I'm not an anti-vaxxer. I'm not putting that out there, but I'm just saying, like, it's funny how they're now saying, oh, this might be the case, but we'll talk about it. They say the Marine Corps Commandant said Saturday that COVID-19 vaccination mandates are negatively impacting military recruiting. Now, I've not heard anybody specifically in the past year really talk about this is why they're not joining. I think if anybody were going to say this, it typically would be for other reasons beyond the COVID vaccine. That was a hot topic, too long ago. But they say, speaking at the Reagan National Defense Forum in Simi Valley, California on Saturday, General David Berger said in regards to the vaccine mandate that quotations, where it is having an impact for sure is on recruiting, where in parts of the country there's still myths and beliefs about the backstory behind it, according to military.com. So let me drink some water because I got to go on a little rant here. All right. So we can understand General Berger's sentiment here. We do. However, there's this thing called science. Stuff develops, changes over time. As you get more information comes in. You make a better analysis and you give better information out based on that. However, that's not what was going on with COVID vaccines back in 2020, 2021. And that is because it went from, oh, you get it, you don't get COVID-19. Then you get it, but your symptoms are less. Or you can't transmit it, or, there's some in-between tests. Then the last is, but you won't die. And that was kind of what was being resonated. And it's like, that's the saving grace, right? Where, I'm sure there's somebody that has passed away that did receive their COVID-19 vaccine. So, and obviously this is science. There's a spectrum of everything, right? So this seems very 2021, 2020, where we're talking about this black and white era of it's still being incorrectly documented, which, we're still gathering information, but I don't think it's safe to say that. Says the Marine Corps currently mandates vaccination exempt in the case of religious exemptions, and while Berger stood by the Corps' current vaccination policy, he did not deny that it had a noticeable impact on recruiting, highlighting the South in particular, which would make sense because who do you think is going to join the Marine Corps? You're not going to get some New Yorker person with a bunch of crazy hair that probably has some diehard passion to join the Marine Corps. So, I see this as a lost touch of basis of who is joining the Marine Corps. I can tell you, we do not have a statistical basis that the DOD or, the Department of the Navy is going to produce to show us where people are recruiting out of, where they're having easier access to the future of the Marine Corps. But it's pretty obvious, if you're being hired to go shoot bad guys, probably people that have shot guns before, probably some people that don't deal with, law enforcement or something very well and are, wanting to do so with some kind of patriotic touch. Crazy, right? So I find that funny, and it's almost calling water wet, which I can confirm. So anyway, he says also here in quotations, there was not accurate information, it was very politicized, and people make decisions, and they still have those same beliefs. That's hard to work your way past, Berger said in response to a question at the forum. He says, quotations, you talked to me in the cafeteria, and one of my first questions is, do I have to get that vaccine? And you go, yeah, you do. He says, okay, I'll talk to you later. Maybe it's that fast, right? I don't want to say that's the only thing that's causing people not to, right? I think people have a lot of other things where, like, getting a COVID vaccine is not the reason why somebody is going to say they're not joining the military. The Marine Corps met its recruiting quotas for 2022, which, by the way, the Army, which is an interesting comparison here, is they did not buy like 15,000, right? But the Marine Corps is downsized as well. Let's give credit there. So maybe it wasn't as hard to fulfill certain things because they got rid of artillery and tanks. And so I don't know if that allowed them to look better than the Army does, but let's put that out there. But it says, but recruiting in general remains a struggle and an ongoing concern for all the services. The Army missed its 2022 goals by 25%, approximately 15,000 soldiers, which I did not read that. I just knew that because I keep in touch with this. But it says to help make up for the shortfall, the service has even introduced a future soldier prep course, a kind of basic training for basic training designed to acclimate potential recruits who otherwise don't meet the minimum physical or aptitude requirements for enlisting. The head of the Air Force recruiting is even potentially reviewing tattoos of potential enlistees to help expedite the recruiting process. If I could talk today, I would appreciate it. But they say, according to the latest Marine Corps data on COVID-19 vaccines released December 1st, 96% of active duty Marines are fully vaccinated and 99% are partially so. The numbers of the reserve component are similar, with 96% both fully or partially vaccinated. There are currently 333 approved medical or administrative exemptions, while 23 religious exemptions have been granted as of December 1st. 3,717 Marines have been separated from the service for vaccine refusals. Now, if you want a perspective of 3,000 Marines, it is the smallest branch where I've seen anywhere from around 150,000-ish Marines at a time. So, 3,000 is not a small number. Also, you have to, if I can not hit my mic either, you have to account this could have been a pilot. This could have been a recon guy. This could have been, these aren't just all people that were just pew-pew bad guys, right? Like, there's a lot of training that went into these people. I'm sure there are people that were senior enlisted. We did see that as well. So that is something I want to address here, like the organizational integrity. And again, I want to get at the end of this. There's so much more. I want to give that bigger picture to you. But it says, Berger's comments come at a time when Congress is considering ending their current vaccine mandate. If you notice, it has not been an issue, and it is December 5th, 2022, when any flu vaccine, which has already been mandated, the regular flu vaccine, has been given, right? Then you compare that to what people were comparing COVID to as the flu, right? And then you're like, so if that was the case, we just give them at the same time, correct? Because the season is there, but that's not the case. But it says House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy has said that the upcoming National Defense Authorization Act, essentially the Department of Defense budget for the upcoming fiscal year, will not be passed unless a vaccine mandate for service members is lifted. On Saturday, Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin stood by the current mandate, telling reporters that, quotations, 1 million people died in the United States of America. We lost hundreds in the DOD. So this mandate has kept people healthy. A lot of people will contest that number of million with, was this a issue from some comorbidity? Were they in a car accident? How are these numbers inflated? I don't want to go into that. I think that will be years later where somebody can actually decipher through all this stuff. But what I want to get at with this situation is you have to understand, like, essentially what COVID vaccines did to the military, right? There were 60,000 service members kicked out. Let's give that 60,000 in comparison to how that set the military back almost a year in a lot of senses. So I'll give you some context here. So just one branch, the U.S. Navy, out of this 1.3 million is almost 400,000 active, right? That's a pretty big service, okay? Now, each year, the U.S. Navy pumps through around 40,000 recruits through the boot camp enlisted pipeline. Through the commissioning pipeline, I've heard numbers of around 3,000. So there are around 43,000 people per year being pushed through. Now, on top of that, during this year of where this was going on, we had numbers that were reduced because all the precautions and everything else. So that knocked it down even further because there weren't as many people going through. You still had people getting out as well. So you're looking at, really, I would say, this 60,000 is just who was kicked out. And we'd already paid for those people to have seats in the military. They were trained. They were already there, right? We bought their seats. They went to boot camp. They went to their A schools. They went to all that. So I think that's why we're still seeing 2022, December 5th, we're talking about this is still an issue. And I know it's a dead horse a little bit, but I have to laugh that someone is saying that this vaccine mandate would be the reason why somebody is not joining the military. What about the inflation that's gone up, that we have service members that have not been paid for the increase of inflation? It's not even close. Housing allowance that people get paid to live in certain places have not risen to the area's standard of living. You have people that are being fired for standing up for things that they believe are right. You know, where you've seen like Stuart Scheller and Captain Crozier taking care of service members, right? This is something that could have very much been 2 years ago that was discussed, and kind of scratching your head why. But in today's, 2022, it's too late. The people they're not going to listen to you. You've now acknowledged, because there is so much doubling down on this, and the risk versus benefit analysis, I think it was overstated. And so, I don't know what that means for the operational force. I look at that and I'm like, is anyone going to claim like negligence? Is anyone going to claim these other things? Who knows?